So welcome. I think it's 11. Um, Welcome to my talk. My name is Patrick. Just a little bit about me, if this thing works. Um, I've been working with Oracle since '97. Well, not for Oracle, but with Oracle technology. But doing PL SQL since '99. Then started playing with Apex a bit, and I became an ace in 2011. And just because I got the ace title, I thought, well, maybe it's a good idea to get some certifications. So I got the OCA and the OCP certifications. And I won the Developer Choice Award in 2015, which is mainly a lot of issuing Twitters, vote for me, vote for me. And that's how I won, I think. Not because I'm so good. You can read stuff I wrote on my blog on all things Oracle, which somehow stopped working, but there's a different place where the articles are still stored. And I wrote some articles for OTech magazine, which somehow disappeared. So I put the articles up on my own website. I'm starting to see a trend here. I don't know. I've been building a lot of plugins for PL SQL Developer. My tool of choice is better than SQL Developer. Been along way before that, and of course, it's better than Toad. And I also have been building some plugins for Apex. I've been around on different conferences, and now I'm here at Latvia. You can contact me. My presentation is already on the thumb drive, so no need to take pictures. You can find this in the presentation. As I mentioned, I'm an Oracle ace, and they asked us to put in this slide. What's the Oracle ace program? Well, actually, it's just an acknowledgement for what you've been doing and how much you have been helping your peers globally. There's 3 tiers: associate, ace, and ace director. And going from right to left, the left one's the top dog. If you want to apply for the ace program, that's the URL. And if you want to nominate somebody, there's something on the bottom here, which just fell off, but it's in the slides. You can nominate somebody else to become an ace. Okay, now the topic for today's talk: get to know your code by instrumentation. I don't know how many of you have been to Martin's talk yesterday afternoon. Which you were, of course you were. Of course you were. Just a few. Well, more than a few. Just about half the room. Okay. He was talking about instrumentation for the entire application. I'll be talking about instrumentation especially for the PL SQL part of your application. And that's not said you cannot use this for other pieces of your application, but I'm just focused on the PL SQL part. So why do you want to use instrumentation or logging? Well, if there's no logging around, it's like flying blind. It's not a question of if your program will run into an error. It's the question when it will run into an error. And if you don't have any kind of instrumentation or logging, there's no way you can find out where the actual problem is. And yeah, you're bound to fly into a wall at some times. So how do we do this? In production, you cannot, most of the time, you cannot start a debug session and replay the actions the user has been doing. You're just not allowed to do that. Also, you're not allowed to issue some new code, so which might give you more information on how your program is behaving. That's just not done. your DBA will say, no way, this is running, not perfectly, but for most of the time. But you can probably flip a switch, do an update on a table. So if you make sure your code, your instrumentation code is already in the program, just sleeping, then by using this, by flipping the switch, you can turn it on and get the information you need. So how do you want to do this? Logging in PL/SQL is not available by default. And no, dbms output is not logging. You can use it for during development to see what's going on, but like if I build some, can you read this? I hope so. Yeah, you can. You're in the first row. If you build a program and you say, well, there's start of my program doing some important stuff and etc. etc. And if you execute it, it'll show you it's successfully completed. Because, of course, you forgot to turn on server output. Something everybody always forgets. So if you run it again, it'll show you what your program has been doing. Good? Well, during development, it might be a good idea just to see directly after your program is finished what it's been doing. But as soon as the session ends, this information is gone. So what you want is you want some sort of DB logging. You can build your own. Let's say we create a function, a table to log some information, and then after that we create the program again. It's just about the same thing as we did before. Instead of writing to dbms output, I'm inserting into the table directly. And if I run my program, it shows no output. But if I call, I select data from the log, there's what's been happening. And of course, if you're running your tests, you're doing a rollback, and after that, there is nothing left. Right? This is something that's happened to me a couple of times. I've seen all this logging, and now it's gone. So actually, what you actually want to do, instead of writing the inserts in the in your source code, you build a procedure to do the insert for you. So that makes it simpler to build your code. Just say log this, and then whatever message you want, and have the program or the program take care of the ID and the timestamp, etc. In this case, that's done by using defaults. And then if you execute the program and you select the stuff, it's there again. And then, of course, you roll back and it's gone again. By doing it in a procedure, it should be persistent. So how do we fix that? Well, you can create a procedure and then make it an autonomous transaction. That means it will, well, you can see of it as it will start up a new session, do the insert for you, do a commit, and just commit whatever's done in that part of the program, not committing anything in your other transaction. So if you run this and you select stuff, it's there. Of course, it's always there. And now you do a rollback and you select again, and it's still there. So that's what the autonomous transaction will do for you. Now I was just building my own logging system, and I like to build stuff, but I like to build new stuff, and I found an open source system which really helps me do the logging. It's more it gives me more information than what I could have thought of myself. And yeah, that's what the way I will go. But it didn't do completely what I wanted to do, and that's the beauty of open source. You can change the implementation. So I did some adaptations. Now, what is this open source framework I'm using? It's Logger, and Logger is, yeah, as I said, an open source system. You install it into a separate schema. You grant access to the objects, the Logger package, and maybe even the tables to individual users or to public, which is what I do, because I think everybody should be able to use it. And one of the beauty things of this is that there are cleanup jobs installed automatically. It cleans up any logger information other than X days. You can say, for instance, 5 days or 10 days or 365 days if you want, if you have enough space in your database. And it'll only record all the messages with the severity lower than the threshold. And it'll just clean up the messages lower than the threshold you give it. For instance, I want to see what errors happened. I just want to know for forever what happened like 40, 50 days ago. But the information or debug messages, they're just useful for like a week or maybe two. And then it also expires, it cleans up expired preferences. You can do several preferences, especially in the one we changed. So what about these thresholds? Well, in Logger there are different levels available. And it might be flipped upside down, but this is more easy for me. First of all, you have the debug level. Debug gives you all the information you might need. If, for instance, for every excuse me, for every special part of your application, you'll write a debug message. Like Martin said, don't write debug messages inside a loop that's going to be executed for like a gazillion times, because it'll just flood your log table. But you can, for instance, log every commit you do if you do it once every 10,000 rows or so. There's a different level, which is the information level. This is just a program flow. It'll tell me when I enter a procedure and when I end or exit the procedure or function. Every program should have, the first line should be begin for this program, and the last line should be end for this program or exit for this program. And then there's the warning level. Warnings are non-critical errors. If somebody, for instance, in Holland, you have to be 18 to be able to buy some beers. You can almost buy beer, Martin. But if somebody puts in an age which is like 16 or 17, he'll be issued a warning, and you want to record that somebody tried to buy a beer when he's not 18 yet, but it's not critical. So that's the warnings for you. And then of course there's errors. Everything that fails in some way or another, that's an error. Either expected or unexpected. You might argue that expected errors are warnings, but so if you put the threshold on debug, everything up to the debug level will be recorded. So the error messages, the warnings, the information, and the debug messages. If you were to say, well, I put the threshold on information, there's no more debug messages going to be in your log table, making it a bit more bit easier to go through the different parts of your application. What I would suggest in production is put it on warning. I want to at least see all the warnings that are being issued, and somebody should go into the table and see what warnings have been issued over the last day or two or week or whatever. And if that's too much, if there's going to be a lot of warnings and you don't want to see them, then put it on error. Error is, in my opinion, the lowest level you can have. There's a lower level, which is off, but I don't think you should use that. So keep the level of messages at least on error. This is how the default logging open source framework thing plugin works. There's just one switch to rule them all. So if you put it on, for instance, debug level, you get all the information you might be interested in, but from the entire application. Or in my case, the PL/SQL part of the application. Where you might just be interested in one or two procedures or packages or whatever. And if you put it on information, it'll give you just the information for the instance about the program flow, every part of your application. Whereas I might just be interested in a small part. Warning, same thing. And error, which might be interested always to see every error in every part. So how do you do this? How do you use the logger framework? Well, I create a simple package, an example package. I'm using a constant where I put in my scope, and I'm using the user and the PL/SQL unit. I mean, I can get that from the database itself. And then there's gonna be it's 258 now. It used to be like 62. I think I used to have 62, but now since Oracle 12.2, you can have really, really, really long object names, so it should be a little bit bigger. Why would anybody use that? But then again, I got the implementation for my package, for my procedure foo, and the first thing, it'll give me a variable scope using the scope prefix, and then I type the name of the function or procedure I'm in at this moment. Then after that, I'll just record log information. Logger has these different procedures for the different levels of debugging or logging information. This one is information, and it'll just show you start using the scope. Then I create a debug message which says do something important, which is, I think, the best debug message you can get. Do something important. Then after that, we start a loop, and I'm issuing a warning if L exceeds 100, which should not happen, but if it does, I'm issuing a warning. The value is going to be higher than expected. And one of the cool things about Logger is there's this extra column where you can just put in the error backtrace, format error backtrace using the mesh utility. That gives you a CLOP of loads and loads of information and might be handy afterwards. And then at the end, we'll add another information message saying I'm at the end using the same scope. And what I also found by using this, it's fairly easy to use the line on which the message was entered. So I can know if this is line 40, something just before that might have happened. And I can easily go into my source code to find it. Then if there's an error, well, you log an error and you log as much information as you can possibly get. All the states of variables, the states of, well, actually your entire session, and try to put it in there. There's a part of Logger which gives you the ability to define like a PL SQL table or associative. I'm from Oracle 7, PL SQL table, an associative array containing code value pairs of your the name of the variable and the value of it. And for a function, it's pretty much the same, except that the end message should be before the return, because otherwise it will not be recorded. Something I ran into. Why didn't I see this? Now you're saying, oh, but Logger takes time to build in and to execute. Well, yeah. I've been doing some performance tests with the different Logger levels. No logging, conditional logging. That's when I check first before I even go into the logging statement. With logging, and then there's another one with use defined types. And what I see is that if there's no logging involved, and I put my level on debug, it takes 22 something. All the times are in milliseconds. If it's on warning, it's almost the same. And if there's so if you're using the different types of logging, and your threshold is not high enough to actually do something with it, it takes it takes up almost no time, except for when you're doing condition when you're using user-defined types. Because when you're using user-defined types, let's say we have a type for the department with all its employees, and it can be something like this: the element, the department number, department name, location, and all the employees, which can be a nested table. And when you convert this user-defined type, because you want some kind of XML, it takes some time to come up with something like this. And that's where the most of the time is spent when using user-defined types. So you probably want to do conditional logging then. Check first if you are gonna log this message. Otherwise, you're doing the conversion, and then in the logger framework it says, "Oh, that's all nice and everything, but I'm not gonna do anything. See ya." So you're stuck with a lot of information, and trying to find the right information is something like, "Where's Wally?" or Waldo, or I don't know how you guys know this. It's like, this is my log table, and now where's the part I'm interested in? Anybody see Waldo? No, he's over there. Yes, really. Eh? I must say, I got this image from the internet, and I was wrong, and I was just clicking around, and somehow at some point you find Waldo, and it says, "Ah, it's Waldo." Okay, keep that. So how do you find anything that's interesting? Well, if you just select everything from logger logs, it's a lot of information, which might not all be of interest. So first of all, we want to select only the columns we're interested in at a higher level. If we want to go deeper into it, we use the ID to find the extra information. And then, yeah, that's that. And then maybe you can just get the information for a special SID for your session. Or maybe you can get everything that's for a different level or above a special level. Or maybe you can you want to see all the messages that contain some kind of some piece of text. Or you might be, you want to see everything in a special scope, whereas the scope is the program we're running at that moment. Like I said earlier, there's one switch to rule them all. Me and a colleague of mine, we made an adaptation, and we made one switch per scope. So now we can have, for current development, we might want to have it on debug. We want to see everything that's going on. And for instance, for your read settings, you just want to see when it's going wrong. If there's a no data found or whatever error there might be. Writing to the log, just maybe you want to see the warnings, and use it on every different a different program, give it you can give it a different level. It'll have the master level. The master level will be, in this case, the warnings, but it'll override that. If the level you want for a special program like read settings, just see the errors, it'll override whatever's the master level setting. I'm doing pretty good. This is something Tom Kite said. You shouldn't want to read this, but everybody should instrument their code. One of the best instrumented pieces of code is the Oracle database itself, but it's the C code, and nobody ever gets to, well, except Camille. Nobody ever gets to check into that. But if something goes wrong, you just flip a switch and do the thing again and get all the information so support knows what happened, and they'll tell you what to do because it's never Oracle's fault. And that's it for my part. Are there any questions? And she's supposed to run up with a microphone, if any. I think she's running. Yeah. Kind of hard to see.
One simple question: that why it is called instrumentation if it's actually logging?
Why is it called instrumentation if it's actually logging? Well, by instrumenting your code, you write information about what you're. I'm going to go over here. By instrumenting your code, you write information about what your program is doing to some kind of log, either a table or a file, or that's about it. So the framework is called Logger. So I'm using logging and instrumentation just about interchangeably. Does that answer? No?
So, but do I understand correctly that basically it is the same thing?
It's basically the same thing, but you can use logging for different things, but especially for instrumentation, you just log what you're doing, just so you can afterwards see what's going on or what has been going on.
This word instrumentation just sounds a little bit confusing, but thank you for explaining.
Any other questions? She's running in.
Where do you configure, how long do you keep the logging messages? You said at the beginning that you can configure.
You can configure that in a settings table where you can. It's so hard to see with these lights. Where you can say how many days you want or after how many days the log messages should be removed from the table, as long as they're below a special threshold or above, depending on what you're. So if you say I want to delete everything, information and up, information debug, then it'll keep the warnings and the errors forever, but the other stuff will be removed, and it's just a column in the table. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.